Have you ever felt utterly invisible amidst a crowd? A waitress in Los Angeles worked double shifts, grappling with an impossible situation that no one around her seemed to perceive. Until one Friday night, she served a customer who appeared unremarkable, but who did something that would change her life forever. He left no money on the table, nor did he leave a compliment. What he did leave behind was so unanticipated that she collapsed in tears in the restaurant's restroom. But who was this mysterious man? And what was written on that paper that made her cry? What happened when she decided to follow the instructions she found? Today you're about to discover how a seemingly simple gesture triggered a chain of events that no one could have foreseen, and why this story went viral worldwide. Prepare yourself, because what you're about to witness will restore your faith in human kindness. Friday night at Bella Vista Italian restaurant in West Hollywood was in full swing as Sofia Martinez adjusted her apron around her waist for the 10th time, attempting to conceal the tremor in her hands that had plagued her for weeks. At 26, her brown hair was pulled back into a practical bun, revealing the tension in her expression, while her dark eyes bore the weight of sleepless nights and worries that seemed to mount with each passing day. The constant movement between tables had become her sole distraction from the anguish that consumed her thoughts about the urgent $85,000 heart surgery her mother Carmen needed to undergo. Yet, with every lull between orders, her mind inevitably drifted back to the impossible figures dancing in her head. "I need to stay focused on work," she murmured to herself as she rechecked the tables in her section. "Every tip counts now more than ever. But I'm still so far from what I need." The chime of the entrance bell echoed through the restaurant as a 51-year-old man entered discreetly, pulling a baseball cap low over his graying hair and scanning for a table at the back of the establishment. Jonathan Roumie moved with the caution of someone who had learned to cherish moments of anonymity, especially after the burgeoning recognition his role as Jesus in the series The Chosen had brought into his life in recent years. His gentle eyes, which had conveyed compassion and wisdom to millions of viewers worldwide, now simply sought a quiet spot where he could process the intense emotions of the filming day he had just wrapped at the nearby studio. He chose an inconspicuous table in the corner of the restaurant, away from the main thoroughfare, and carefully removed his cap, revealing a face that bore the serenity acquired through years of a profound spiritual journey that had led him from a secular life in New York to becoming one of the most recognized faces in contemporary Christian television. "All I crave is a moment of peace," he mused as he settled himself into the chair. "A sanctuary where I can simply be Jonathan, rather than the figure millions perceive as Jesus on screen." Sophia approached the table, her meticulously rehearsed professional smile in place, bearing a menu and a glass of iced water, utterly oblivious to the fact that she was about to attend to the man who portrayed Jesus Christ in one of the most widely viewed Christian television series globally. Her attention was cleaved between the customer before her and the relentless apprehension gnawing at her heart concerning her mother's recent medical tests, which had revealed alarming cardiac deterioration necessitating immediate surgical intervention. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Bella Vista," she uttered with a cordiality that thinly veiled her emotional and financial exhaustion. "May I begin by offering you something to drink while you peruse our menu for tonight's dinner?" Jonathan's gaze lifted, and he immediately discerned something acutely familiar in the young waitress's countenance. The very spiritual weariness he had witnessed in countless biblical figures he had portrayed. A soul burdened by a weight seemingly beyond its solitary capacity to endure. "Sparkling water with a twist of lemon would be perfect, thank you," he responded in his characteristically gentle voice, subtly scrutinizing the telltale signs of strain she endeavored to conceal. "And please do not concern yourself with expediting my order. I perceive you are experiencing a particularly bustling evening." Over the ensuing 40 minutes, as Jonathan savored his seafood linguine and observed the restaurant's ebb and flow, he found himself compelled to note how Sophia navigated her tables with a mechanical efficiency that barely managed to conceal patent indicators of someone contending with crushing circumstances. He noted her discreetly rubbing her temples during fleeting intermissions between patrons, how her shoulders appeared to bear an invisible burden far exceeding the trays she carried, and, most notably, how her gaze would momentarily lose its focus, as if her mind was perpetually elsewhere, processing anxieties that unequivocally transcended the professional duties of that evening. Years spent portraying Jesus in the series The Chosen had honed his sensitivity to discern the silent anguish that innumerable individuals bear, often unnoticed by those around them, oblivious to the profound depth of their struggles. And something about Sophia stirred in him the same innate empathy he had learned to channel into his most poignant portrayals. Lord, she carries a profound burden. He murmured a silent prayer as he watched Sophia attend to other tables, her smile clearly strained. Guide me if there's any way I can assist, even if it's merely a word of encouragement. Jonathan's intuition regarding Sophia's emotional state was strikingly validated when her phone chimed during the height of the bustling dinner service, and she fixed her gaze upon the display with a countenance that commingled desperate hope and utter dread, undeniably identifying a caller that might convey tidings she both longed for and profoundly feared. Jonathan, coincidentally concluding his own repast, subtly observed as Sophia withdrew to a quieter, more secluded corner of the establishment to answer the summons. And even across the expanse, he could discern her entire frame progressively tensing as she absorbed the words from the caller. Sophia's complexion blanched upon hearing the somber voice of Dr. Ramirez from Cedars-Sinai Hospital, elucidating that her mother Carmen's most recent diagnostic results indicated substantial deterioration, and that the cardiac surgery slated for the following week would necessitate a far greater degree of urgency than anyone had previously anticipated. Ms. Martinez, I must be forthright with you, the physician's voice conveyed over the phone with professional solemnity. Your mother's heart is exhibiting indications that we can no longer afford the luxury of delay. We need to schedule the procedure for the coming days. Sophia re-entered the dining area, desperately endeavoring to recompose her professional demeanor. Yet the tears she struggled to suppress were unmistakably apparent to anyone astute enough to notice, particularly to Jonathan, whose finely honed sensitivity developed over years of acting to discern subtle human emotional nuances, compelled him to instantly recognize that something devastating had transpired during that phone call. She brought the check to his table with visibly trembling hands, attempting to maintain the courteous smile expected of a professional waitress, but utterly failing to conceal the despair that seized her features whenever she believed no one was observing closely enough to discern her internal struggle. Your meal totaled $28, sir, Sophia stated, her voice one she strained to make sound normal and controlled, yet it carried an unmistakable fragility that Jonathan immediately recognized as the sound of someone on the verge of a complete emotional breakdown. Jonathan looked directly into the young woman's eyes and felt in his Catholic heart the same spiritual urgency he experienced when portraying the most poignant scenes where Jesus encountered individuals in their moments of greatest vulnerability and dire need. Thank you for your exceptional service tonight, Sophia, he said, reading her name tag and speaking with unfeigned sincerity. May God bless you and grant you strength to face any challenge you are currently enduring. As Sophia departed to continue attending to her other tables, Jonathan remained seated for several extra minutes, not merely to finish his sparkling water, but primarily to pray and seek divine guidance on how to respond to the situation that was clearly unfolding before him in a manner that seemed far more than mere coincidence. His spiritual journey, which had led him from a secular career in New York to becoming the face of Jesus on television, had taught him to recognize moments when God called him to be an instrument of his compassion in practical and tangible ways. He retrieved the $28 bill and, instead of leaving a traditional cash tip, felt distinctly guided by the Holy Spirit to take a different action that could open doors to something far greater than a simple act of monetary generosity. Taking a pen, he began to carefully write on the back of the receipt, pausing occasionally to pray over each word he would choose, instinctively knowing that this moment could be a turning point in the life of that young woman who was so obviously struggling alone against impossible circumstances. Lord, use me as your instrument, he silently prayed as he wrote. Show me how to be your hands and your heart in this situation. First, Jonathan wrote a specific address in clear, legible handwriting. Studio City Community Center, 4024 Radford Avenue, Saturday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. a location where he knew he could organize something special if God confirmed the direction he felt in his heart. Immediately below the address, he added a prayer that came directly from his personal experience with divine intercession during his own moments of greatest need. May the Lord Jesus Christ, who sees all our silent struggles, pour his peace upon your anguished heart. God has a perfect plan. Have faith and courage. He concluded by signing simply, "A brother in Christ, J.R." Jonathan carefully folded the receipt, left the exact amount for the bill on the table, and departed from the restaurant with a profound sense that he had planted a seed of hope whose growth he fully entrusted to the hands of divine providence. Lord, if this is your plan, open her heart to trust and embrace it, he prayed as he walked to his car, and grant me the wisdom to know how to proceed when the right moment arrives. Sophia continued working for another 20 minutes, serving other tables and attempting to keep her mind occupied with mechanical tasks to prevent the panic regarding her mother's urgent surgery from completely overwhelming her in the midst of her work shift, which still had 2 hours left. When she finally returned to clear the table of the gentle man who had dined alone and displayed such genuine cordiality, she found the exact amount for the bill meticulously arranged alongside the folded receipt in a manner that clearly indicated something significant had been written upon it. How peculiar, she muttered under her breath as she unfurled the paper with escalating curiosity. Why did he not leave a standard cash gratuity like every other patron? The full import of Sophia's discovery on the receipt hit her with the force of an unforeseen divine epiphany, initially by the revelation of the enigmatic address, penned in meticulous handwriting that bespoke profound significance, and subsequently by the prayer's words, which appeared to have been inscribed specifically for her anguished Catholic heart by someone who had discerned her suffering without her uttering a single syllable about her dire predicament. Her legs gave way, compelling her to steady herself against the nearest chair as she devoured and redevoured the message, which seemed to have reached her through an inexplicable divine intercession, defying all human logic, especially the words concerning Jesus Christ's perception of silent struggles, which precisely encapsulated her feelings for weeks, her solitary battle against an insurmountable financial predicament while striving to uphold a veneer of normalcy at work. Tears welled up and spilled down her cheeks as she clutched the paper in trembling hands, utterly overwhelmed by the profound realization that a complete stranger had not merely observed her profound distress, but had responded in such a spiritually resonant manner that it felt like a direct benediction to the fervent prayers she offered nightly before sleep. How did he discern the depth of my anguish? She whispered to herself, her gaze sweeping across the deserted restaurant as if seeking answers among the vacant tables. And what sort of individual leaves an enigmatic address rather than currency? What precisely awaits me this Saturday at 2? A burgeoning curiosity, mingled with a tentative hope, began to take root in her heart as she meticulously folded the receipt and tucked it into her apron pocket, feeling for the first time in weeks that perhaps, just perhaps, the divine truly was heeding her fervent supplications and dispatching succor in a manner she could never have conceived. Saturday dawned, ushering in a quintessential sunny Los Angeles morning, yet Sofia Martinez awoke at 6 a.m., her stomach roiling with an acute sense of anxiety, clutching for the 10th time the crumpled receipt that had transformed into her talisman of hope during the 48 hours that had elapsed since that pivotal evening at the restaurant. She had spent the past 48 hours obsessively searching the address on Google Maps, discovering that the Studio City Community Center was a modest community hub offering various social programs, but without finding any specific information about what might be taking place there at 2 o'clock that Saturday afternoon. She put on her best outfit, a light blue blouse and dark jeans she reserved for special occasions, and applied light makeup to conceal the dark circles under her eyes, which had deepened since the devastating call about the worsening of her mother Carmen's condition. Perhaps it's madness to go there without knowing what to expect, she murmured as she looked at herself in the mirror. But something in my heart tells me I need to trust and discover what that kind man wanted to show me. The bus ride to Studio City took 45 minutes, a period Sophia spent alternating between silent prayer and speculation about what she might encounter at the community center, as she watched the urban landscape of Los Angeles pass by the public transport's hazy window. When she finally alighted at the stop nearest the indicated address, she walked 3 blocks until she stood before a red brick building with a simple sign confirming it was the correct location, but which offered no clue about special events or activities scheduled for that afternoon. It was exactly 1:55 in the afternoon when she approached the main entrance, noting that the parking lot was surprisingly full for a Saturday, with numerous cars that appeared to belong to people from varying socioeconomic strata. Lord Jesus, if you are truly behind this, she prayed silently as she walked towards the glass door. Grant me the courage to enter and discover what your plan is for my life and my mother's life. Sophia pushed open the entrance door and immediately heard the sound of several voices conversing animatedly, coming from a larger room at the end of the corridor. A buzz that suggested an informal yet significant gathering of people who clearly knew each other well and were engaged in some form of important planning. She walked tentatively down the gleaming linoleum-floored corridor, past vacant ancillary rooms, until she reached the source of the voices, where a plaque on the door designated Main Conference Room. Through the frosted glass pane, she could discern the silhouettes of several individuals seated in a circle. Taking a fortifying breath to steel her resolve, she tapped softly on the door and waited, listening as the conversations abruptly ceased, followed by the sound of approaching footsteps to address her unexpected yet clearly anticipated arrival. Please God, she whispered a swift, final prayer, grant me the fortitude to confront whatever awaits me beyond this door. The door swung open, revealing the amiable man from the restaurant, but now Sophia could observe him distinctly in the daylight. Afforded the leisure to process his countenance, unhurried by the work environment, she began to discern a familiarity in his features that she couldn't quite pinpoint. Sophia, the man uttered with a warm smile that radiated genuine sincerity, I am so pleased you chose to trust us and come here, even without knowing what you would encounter. This demonstrates a courageous faith that is precisely what we needed to witness. Behind him, Sophia could glimpse other individuals who appeared strangely familiar, as though she had encountered them before, yet couldn't precisely place where, until her mind began to forge slow connections between the visages before her and images she had seen in television advertisements. Now I understand who you are, Sophia stammered, her voice thick with the revelation. You're Jonathan Roumie, the actor who portrays Jesus in the Chosen series that my mother watches religiously at the hospital. The recognition struck her as a profound revelation as she realized she had been greeted by someone whose work had provided spiritual solace to her mother during her most arduous moments. And these individuals are your castmates, aren't they? She continued, her legs threatening to give way. How do you know my name? How do you know about my predicament? Jonathan gently grasped her arm to steady her and guided her into the room where chairs had been arranged in an inviting circle that immediately made her feel embraced rather than intimidated by the presence of renowned individuals. Sophia, please, take a seat with us here, Jonathan said, gesturing toward a comfortable chair in the center of the circle, and allow me to explain how we came to reach out to you and why we decided to organize ourselves to assist your family in this exceptionally challenging predicament. Dallas Jenkins, the series director, whom Sophia recognized from interviews she had seen on television, leaned forward with an expression of genuine compassion. Jonathan apprised us of the encounter you two had at the restaurant on Friday, Dallas explained in his characteristically warm voice, and how he perceived you were shouldering an immense burden, something that profoundly moved his heart in a way he felt was divine guidance to take action. Shahar Isaac, the actor portraying Peter, joined the conversation with contagious enthusiasm. When Jonathan apprised us of your situation and how God had placed you on his heart during our team prayers, we immediately knew we needed to undertake practical measures to assist. But how did you find out about my mother and the surgery? Sophia asked, still attempting to process the reality of sitting with people she had only ever seen on television. I never mentioned anything specific about our situation when I waited on you at the restaurant. Jonathan leaned forward, his hands clasped together as they were when he portrayed Jesus during moments of profound teaching, and patiently explained with paternal gentleness how he had been guided to discreetly look into her situation after that night at the restaurant. After I left Bella Vista on Friday, I couldn't get you out of my mind, he said with absolute sincerity. So I asked a friend who works in human resources to conduct some discreet inquiries into your circumstances, and we discovered your mother, Carmen Martinez, her cardiac diagnosis, and the urgent need for the $85,000 surgery. Vanessa Benavente, the actress who played Mary in the series, added with tears in her eyes, "When we learned you were working double shifts trying to raise money to save your mother's life, it reminded us of so many biblical stories about devoted children caring for their parents, and we felt God was calling us to be instruments of His provision." The revelation that renowned individuals had dedicated their time and energy to investigate and concern themselves with her predicament left Sophia utterly speechless. "I can't believe you did all this for a complete stranger," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Why would you care so deeply about a waitress you don't even properly know?" Dallas Jenkins picked up a laptop from a nearby table, opened it, and rotated the screen so Sophia could clearly see what appeared on the webpage, revealing an online fundraising campaign titled Carmen's Heart, A Mother's Miracle, featuring a dignified photograph of her mother. "Over the past 3 days, ever since Jonathan apprised us of your situation, we've organized this online campaign and shared it with our global network of fans," Dallas explained, his voice swelling with emotion. "And the response has been absolutely extraordinary, far exceeding anything any of us could have envisioned." The screen displayed numbers that seemed surreal to Sophia. The goal of $85,000 had not only been met, but surpassed by an additional $62,000, with over 5,000 individual donations pouring in from people across dozens of different countries. Jonathan gestured towards the comments constantly scrolling on the page, each replete with words of encouragement, promises of prayer, and personal anecdotes from individuals who had navigated similar circumstances. "This isn't merely about money, Sophia," Jonathan stated with palpable reverence. "This is about a global community of people of faith uniting to demonstrate the practical love of Christ." $147,000? Sophia uttered the number aloud several times. "Does this truly mean my mother can undergo the surgery and still have funds remaining for her recovery?" The moment of revelation was abruptly interrupted when Sophia's phone rang with urgency, and as she saw the number for Cedars-Sinai Hospital, her face drained of all color. "It's my mother's hospital," she uttered with a trembling voice. "The last time they called, it was to inform me that her condition had deteriorated." Jonathan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Take the call, Sophia, and know that all of us will be praying as you speak with them." With trembling hands, Sophia accepted the call and activated the speakerphone. "Miss Martinez," came Dr. Ramirez's voice, "I have urgent news regarding your mother that couldn't wait. Has her condition worsened further?" Sophia inquired, bracing herself for the worst. "Quite the contrary, Miss Martinez," the doctor stated with palpable joy. "The latest tests have shown an unexpected stabilization, and we've managed to schedule her surgery for Monday morning with Dr. Harrison, one of the West Coast's foremost cardiologists." The room erupted in applause as Sophia collapsed to her knees, sobbing with relief. "Doctor, about the payment," Sophia managed to utter. "I have the funds now through a campaign orchestrated by kind-hearted individuals." Jonathan reached for his phone. "Dr. Ramirez, this is Jonathan Roumie, and I confirm that all costs are covered through our campaign, and the hospital will receive payment on Monday." "Mr. Roumie, this is an extraordinary honor," the doctor replied. "The honor is ours, doctor," Jonathan responded with humility. Monday dawned with a typical Los Angeles morning haze, but for Sophia Martinez, the day signified far more than just another sunrise. It was the culmination of all the recent miracles in the operating room of Cedars-Sinai Hospital, where her mother Carmen would finally undergo the life-saving heart operation. Sophia had arrived at the hospital at 5 in the morning, 2 hours ahead of the scheduled surgery time, carrying a small bag containing her mother's personal effects and the rosary Carmen always clutched during moments of intense prayer, along with a handwritten letter from Jonathan Roumie and the entire cast of The Chosen, wishing her strength and promising prayers throughout the procedure. When she entered Carmen's room in the cardiac ward, she found her mother awake and remarkably composed, with a sparkle in her eyes that Sophia hadn't seen in months, as if renewed hope had restored not only her spirit, but also her physical vigor. My dearest daughter, Carmen said in a voice stronger than Sophia had expected, I dreamt all night of angels surrounding me and awoke knowing that God has a perfect plan for today. At 6:30 a.m., an hour prior to the scheduled surgery, Sophia was taken aback by the unexpected arrival of Jonathan Roumie, accompanied by Dallas Jenkins and Vanessa Benavente, who had decided to be present in person to support the family during this pivotal moment, demonstrating that their commitment extended far beyond mere financial assistance. We couldn't possibly let you face this day by yourselves, Jonathan explained, embracing Sophia warmly, especially after all we've shared these past few days. You've become part of our spiritual family. Carmen was visibly moved to finally meet in person the man who portrayed Jesus in the series that had become her source of solace during the most arduous months of her illness. And as Jonathan knelt beside her hospital bed to pray with her, Sophia witnessed something profoundly poignant unfold between them. Lord Jesus, Jonathan prayed, holding Carmen's hands, we ask that you guide Dr. Harrison's hands today, and that this surgery be a testament to your love and care for your faithful daughters. Carmen replied through tears, Thank you for being an instrument of God in our lives, Jonathan. Your kindness has saved my daughter as much as it will save my life. The surgery lasted 4 hours and 15 minutes, a duration during which Sophia, Jonathan, and the others remained in the waiting room, engaged in constant prayer interspersed with discussions about the plans for the foundation they were developing to assist other families in similar predicaments. When Dr. Harrison finally appeared in the waiting room, still clad in his surgical scrubs, his expansive smile was sufficient for everyone to know that the news was the best possible. The surgery was a complete success, he announced with evident professional satisfaction. We were able to fully repair the damaged heart valves, and Mrs. Carmen's heart is functioning better than we had anticipated, considering her previous condition. Sophia collapsed in tears of gratitude into Jonathan's arms, as everyone else in the room raised their hands in spontaneous prayer of thanksgiving. Dr. Harrison, Jonathan stated reverently, we want you to know that we consider your hands to have been direct instruments of God today, and we will be eternally grateful for your skill and dedication. The physician, visibly moved by the sincerity of the moment, responded, In 30 years of practice, I have rarely encountered a family demonstrating such profound support and faith. This undoubtedly contributed to the procedure's success. 6 months later, Sophia stood at the entrance of the erstwhile Bella Vista Italian restaurant, which had been thoroughly renovated and transformed into the official headquarters of the Hearts of Compassion Foundation, the organization she now spearheaded alongside Jonathan and the entire The Chosen team. Carmen, fully recuperated and possessing more vigor than she had experienced in years, served as the emotional support coordinator for families confronting similar medical emergencies, leveraging her own experience to impart hope and pragmatic guidance. The walls of the former restaurant were now adorned with photographs of all the families who had been aided by the foundation, alongside a commemorative plaque precisely at the spot of the table where Jonathan had left that seminal, transformative message. It's unfathomable to think it all began right here, Sophia remarked to Jonathan as they observed the month's first beneficiary family arriving for their initial consultation. A simple prayer on a receipt changed not only our lives, but the lives of countless others. Jonathan smiled with the same gentle benevolence he had displayed that first night. God always had this grander design, Sophia. We merely adhered obediently to the steps he illuminated for us. The Hearts of Compassion Foundation had burgeoned beyond all initial expectations, amassing over $2 million in its first year of operation and facilitating access to life-saving medical care for 47 families. Each case was meticulously investigated and personally overseen by Sophia, who extended the same compassion she had received during her own desperate ordeal. You know, Carmen remarked during the Foundation's monthly meeting, when I was in the hospital battling for my life, I never imagined my illness would become the conduit to help so many others. But now I see that God allowed our suffering so that we might comprehend the pain of others and respond with practical love. Jonathan enthusiastically concurred. That's precisely what we endeavor to portray in The Chosen, how Jesus perceives each individual in their specific need and responds with life-transforming compassion. At the official inauguration ceremony for the Foundation's headquarters, held on the first anniversary of their initial encounter at the restaurant. Sophia held the original receipt Jonathan had left behind, now framed and occupying a place of honor at the reception. This unassuming slip of paper symbolizes far more than mere words of encouragement. She declared to the assembled audience of donors, volunteers, and beneficiary families, "It represents the transformative power of truly perceiving another's suffering and choosing to act with the instruments God has placed in our hands." Jonathan, speaking next, appended, "Sophia and Carmen have taught us that portraying Jesus on television holds scant significance if we do not extend his compassion into the real world, where genuine individuals confront authentic needs that demand practical action beyond mere eloquent words." The commemorative plaque unveiled that day bore the simple inscription, "In memory of the first miracle," where a prayer on a receipt planted the seed of hope that burgeoned into a forest of blessings for hundreds of families. As the ceremony concluded and guests began to disperse, Sophia and Carmen remained seated at the original table where it had all commenced, observing Jonathan engage animatedly with a new family who had just arrived seeking assistance for urgent pediatric surgery. "You know, Mom," Sophia said, holding Carmen's hand, "at times I still find it hard to fully comprehend the reality of all this, that our story of despair has transformed into a wellspring of hope for so many others." Carmen smiled with the profound wisdom of someone who had stared death in the face and discovered that God had greater designs. "That reminds me of the Apostle Paul's words about how God orchestrates all things for the good of those who love him. Even our suffering can become an instrument of healing for others." As they watched Jonathan begin to pray with the new family, just as he had done with them months earlier, Sophia realized that the true miracle had not merely been her mother's physical healing, but the profound revelation of how God's love proliferates when it is generously shared with others, grappling with their own seemingly insurmountable struggles. If Jonathan Roumie's story has resonated with your heart and illuminated how a simple act of compassion can create ripples of transformation that reach hundreds of lives, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story with someone who needs hope today. And tell me, have you ever experienced a moment when you felt unseen in your struggle, only to later discover that God was orchestrating a miracle through unexpected individuals? Or perhaps you've been an instrument of God in aiding someone in despair. Share your experience in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone needs to hear today. Remember, sometimes God employs a simple prayer scrawled on a receipt to alter the destiny of an entire family. May God bless you and utilize you as an instrument of his compassion